right. Well, here we are for our Lunch and Learn for December 5th. We are going to be talking about student engagement with EdTech. And I think that's an interesting topic to talk about, mainly because, just like anything in education, we see that pendulum swing back and forth between technology and paper and pencil tasks. And I think we're kind of in the middle of a swing again. And I don't know if you guys are seeing this in, the schools and classrooms that you're in, but seeing kind of a resurgence of pencil and paper tasks, which to me is a good thing. Like just because I work with EdTech doesn't mean that that's the best option all the time. And I think that's important for our teachers to realize is that paper and pencil has its purpose. EdTech has its purpose. And so we have to just consider what we're using and why we're using it. And so today, just kind of a quick little touch on what is student engagement before we get started. Back in 2020, when everybody went online, a lot of things changed, but one thing that came out was a book called The Distance Learning Playbook. And I wish I could remember all the authors, but I think it was Doug Fisher. Oh, I'd have to look it up. But it was an awesome book that came out because it really broke down instruction, including that digital component into different pieces and what was important for teachers to understand and to realize, all about that clarity of what we want our students to be able to do. And then, of course, into the engagement. And one of the things that the book included was this continuum of engagement. Now, this one is not the one that's actually in the book. This is kind of an expanded version of that. But I loved, and hopefully you guys are still seeing, all right, making sure you're still seeing my screen. I lost my little green bar, but it's still there. But this little, continuum, I think it's important to remember that engagement can be active and passive, and it can be actively disengaged and actively engaged. And so sometimes we think about engagement like, are the students doing what they're supposed to be doing? Are they participating? And yeah, that is part of engagement, but that's really just compliance. And engagement, there's a lot of kind of studies coming out right now about how for students to learn, their brains actually have to be engaged, not just their bodies and what they're doing. And I think that's kind of an important piece to keep in mind as we're thinking about what engagement looks like, especially when we're using educational technology, because a student can be clicking all the buttons and moving all the parts and doing all the things and not actually be engaged in the learning process. And so many times, like I said, we think about that participation piece, but we're really looking at, can they ask questions? Can they be curious? Can they, drive their own learning a little bit? And some people will say, well, high school kids are the ones who do that. No, this could go down as far as, your kindergarten first and second can know what they're supposed to be learning and are they getting there? You just have to kind of put it in their language. So I think that's an important part to think about. My background, of course, is with high reliability schools, the new art and science of teaching. And so I pulled out a piece that we use a lot of times because we talk about what is engagement. And when we're thinking about engagement in terms of the 4 parts that they say in Marzano's new art and science of teaching, paying attention, are they being energized? Are they being intrigued? Are they being inspired? And of course, the new art and science of teaching breaks that down into some different elements as well. And those are kind of the things that I'm going to use to kind of drive today with what educational tech can be used. But again, it's all about, what's my purpose? What am I trying to do with this tool? Am I trying to get students to pay more attention, to be energized, to be intrigued, or to be inspired? And so the first one I have was this paying attention. So let me drop a link in the chat to this page here so that you can click on the links. All right, so I just dropped this page, the whole page, into the chat. But the first one is Mentimeter, which is a fairly simple way to get students to respond. Sometimes students are hesitant to respond in our classroom if it means raising their hand or sharing out loud, but they'll respond digitally. And I think that's a great way to increase those response rates. So if you click on this little "Let's Respond," it should take you to a Mentimeter. I just picked a fun one for us right now. But if you were using this in the classroom, you might have them rank things in order of importance, of impact. You could have rankings for lots of things, but Mentimeter isn't just about rankings. So you could have any kind of question that you want. So let's see if it's collecting here. Maybe. Oh, there we go. We got some response going. And so you can simply, and it lets me respond too. So I can pick my favorite song, and you can just Oh, we're going to put that one last. Last Christmas, Frosty the Snowman. We'll do Jingle Bells. So you can rank it, you can submit it. And of course, like I said, then from my side of things, I can see that we're responding and everybody likes Jingle Bells the most. Oh, Frosty the Snowman is now second, then Silent Night, then Last Christmas. And so I think that's an easy way to get students to respond. And you can still see kind of as a whole, it almost acts like a formative assessment in a way as well. So yes, we're using it for an engagement tool, but it's also giving us feedback onto what students are thinking and know so far about the subject. Some other things when it comes to getting students to pay attention I thought of were, of course, our Pear Deck and Nearpods, where students can engage with those slides as they go during the lesson. There are a couple sites like ClassKick or even Padlet might be a way that students could respond pretty easily because you could ask, hey, drop an idea in here and they could just do it. And the cool part about Padlet, of course, is they can, depending on how you set your settings, they can like it, they can comment, depending on culture of your class and whether that's, feasible. Of course, there's also some AI tools like CuraPod we've talked about before. I didn't want to spend today like rehashing some of the ones we've talked about already this in the Lunch and Learns, but CuraPod is another example that we can increase those response rates because it doesn't let them move on until they respond and they answer. It requires them to try again. It requires them to write again. And so that is kind of paying attention. I try to watch my time. I feel like I'm doing all right so far. Being energized is that second piece of the what engagement really looks like. If you kind of look back up at the strategies here, yeah, physical movement is part of being engaged in the classroom and being energized. And so obviously we're not going to use a lot of ed tech for that other than resources online like Go Noodle or Brain Breaks. But maintaining a lively pace is part of that. And I think it's important to kind of remember that being energized can be like we can increase the energy in a class, but we also sometimes need to decrease the energy in a class. Sometimes, that class right after lunch comes in wired and, wild, and they need to calm down. So there's a couple things that we can do to kind of increase or decrease that pacing. But I think it's also a place that we can use some tools to kind of just control the pacing of the class itself and how we choose to do things. So if Flippity is an oldie but goodie, and they do keep in kind of improving on everything they're doing. You can have virtual breakouts through Flippities. It'll help you create those. You can have games, manipulatives. I love this. You don't have to like create a slide set or anything fancy. You can just do it straight through here. Of course, random name pickers kind of go along with that, paying attention as well, but also the energy of the class. I love the Flippity randomizer. You can actually have it set groups for you already. It makes it super easy. You can say groups of 3, groups of 4. And if you click on any of these demo ones, it'll show you what that looks like. This one's actually, I'm sorry, this is the randomizer where it's just you pick the who, what, when, where. And so like they can write a story or tell whatever, write a sentence. The name picker is the one that has the options, groups of 5, 4, 3, 2, different teams. You can even have a chart. Like there's so many different options. You can click on this more and it will give you anything, including like a little speed networking. So if you want them to have lots of conversations with lots of people, you can set up, it's kind of like the speed dating, where they pair up and they go quick. That would be a way to increase your lively pace as well. Back on the site, if you click on this little try the word master, it's a fun activity. It might be a great opener, a great hook to get your kids interested, but it's basically Wordle. So if you like to play Wordle, you can actually do that, and it acts the same way as Wordle does. You can try to guess the word. They have lots of the games on Flippity. So if I go back to Flippity here, you can create word searches, word puzzles. There's of course Wordle, and there's some matching games and things like that. So those are some ways that you can use a lot of these different tools just to increase or control the pacing of the class that you might want. Some other ideas, of course, I mentioned Go Noodle earlier. A lot of times when I want a brain break, I just search YouTube because it's a video of a teacher doing a brain break with their class might be easier to do, especially if you're looking for secondary examples. But other ways you can kind of add energy, you can use collaborative boards like Canva or Classroom Screen. I think we talked about Classroom Screen before in our Lunch and Learn, so I didn't want to spend too much time there, but It's a great place to have timers built in. You can have your stations set up. You can, a visual schedule of the day. So it really controls that pacing in your classroom. All right. So we're still doing good. All right. Being intrigued. Now, this is one that I really think is interesting. So being intrigued kind of hinges on the idea that our brains crave novelty and really like novelty. Uh, in fact, you can find brain studies and brain scans that are done where when we see something new, certain parts of our brain light up. And the really cool part is that evidence seems to suggest that it doesn't have to be connected to the content at all. It could actually be unrelated, but when you show me something new or tell me a fun fact, my brain lights up and it allows me to learn for about 30 minutes after that, whatever that novelty thing was. And I think that is that's just cool about our brains. Our brains are just really interesting little things. So I love TED Talks for myself, but I wanted to think about okay, how can we use TED Talks with students to get them interested, to get them, kind of hooked into an idea. And I discovered that you can actually go to TED Ed, and it's going to look a lot like the TED Talk page, but you can sort by different subject areas, and you can search and you even look at popular lessons. But then the really cool part is you can customize those and then send them to send your kids to those. So I've got one built in here where it says, let's try it here. And this is what it would look like. They would watch a little video. The videos are shorter than the normal TED Talks. They're anywhere from about 3 to 7 minutes or so, seem to be average. So we're talking about small little chunks. And it lets you, I just shared this one with a link, so I could very easily put that link in Google Classroom or something like that. But this is my link to my pages or my lessons. And I'll show you what it looks like on the other side in just a second. But it tells you this lesson was created by me. I used the lesson creator. So they can watch the video. And we won't necessarily take the time to watch it, but this one's about Google. It gives them some questions to answer from the video based on the video. And you have editing abilities on this, so you can edit them. But it's just kind of quick little checks. You notice that it can be multiple choice, true, false, there's short answer. Then you can actually have an area where the kids can dig a little deeper. So talk about getting intrigued. You can give them extra information to research and to look up. It gives where the sites, where the sources are, and it gives them, they can keep going into those kind of areas. And then there's a discussion area, and they can actually reply online. And so they can click on it and they can click respond and they can answer. So I'm just going to I'm going to hit respond so that I can show you what it looks like on my side of things. So when I log in, I can see my published lessons here, and I can review the student work. Oh, but it doesn't see me as having submitted that, I guess. Let's see. Let's go back to where's my big question. So let's say declarative. I'm just guessing and just putting in answers. Save. Oh. Test. We'll save. Okay, there we go. So now hopefully it will show if I refresh. Hopefully it will show. Nope, it's still not going to. Oh, this worked yesterday, my friends. Oh, there he is. Okay. Oh, nope. Nope. Well, it worked yesterday, so we'll just go with we need to experiment a little more. But you should be able to see your students' works here. And I don't know why it's not connected to these two, other than the fact that I just did my own. I don't know if that's the problem. So, well, lessons learned today. Okay. Anyway, even if all you did was show your students that and did it together, I think it's still a valuable tool to let them be intrigued, because you could watch that together, you could answer the questions together, and you could dig deeper. But I'm pretty sure this will work eventually. So we'll just see. It's still, there it is. It just needed a minute. Okay. So, yes. So now you can see how many, it looks like Becky was able to do it. And that's probably why it didn't want me to do my own, but it would let you guys do it. So you can actually look and see how many attempts she's made. You can actually review the responses, which is really cool, I think. You don't have to, your students do not have to log in to TED Ed. They can actually just put a nickname in. And so, of course, you have to sometimes tell your kids how that works, but that means it's not collecting any data from them as far as their names go. So I think that's pretty cool. I love TED Talks. I think it's a great way to, get some exposure to some topics that maybe you wouldn't normally use. And so you could probably set these up either as stations or, man, what great extension activities for your students who've already mastered particular content. They could dig a little bit deeper, and you could have this set up for them. And so not everybody would even have to participate in something like this. It would be a way for them to be intrigued in the topic in a different way. So I love that. All right. And then our last one, oh, we're still doing good, is being inspired. Now, if we look back up at the elements that fit with being inspired, we're talking about the opportunity to talk about themselves, connect what they're learning to their lives, to apply things in new ways, and motivating, inspiring students. And part of that is having students set goals, having students, be their best selves. There's a lot of altruistic things we can do where students are thinking about their communities or their world that fit with those things. So if we're thinking about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this is getting up into that point, that self-actualization piece. So one of the things I thought about was book creator. Now I've heard about book creator for a long time. And to be honest, I just was like, oh, it's just another product, but it really has some cool templates and some cool applications that you can use with your students. I pulled up one example here that is just like a journal. It's already all done. It was a template, so I didn't create this. It's just available in their resources for teachers. But students could come in here and they could actually connect things to themselves. Some of it would just be about them. And I think that's important sometimes to think about, especially if we've got, say, junior high kids. Those are always the ones I love teaching. For them to be able to look back later at who they were at that time, I think would be kind of a cool little thing. But then you could easily customize this to be more connections to your class instead. So instead of just generic journal entries, they could talk about how this applies to them or what lessons they're learning through something. And so you could customize this for that. But it would be a great way, and you can create from scratch if you want. But what a great way for a way for students to be in, like, talk about what they're interested in. Maybe it's a research project or something like that. But Canva offers those same things. Adobe Express for Education is amazing. So those are some other ways that students could be inspired and capture that inspiration in their learning. So I I'm not technically done, but since there's only just a couple of us here today, I did have a whiteboard that I was just going to let us add some ideas to, and you guys are more than welcome to do that if you would like, just in those areas of paying attention, being energized, being intrigued, and being inspired. But this resource is available for everybody, so I do have some other ideas listed along the way that we didn't necessarily talk about. I did skip right over being intrigues, but I don't know if you guys have played with these simulations, the PhET simulations, but they are pretty robust. In fact, I have this one pulled up, John Travolta. It's actually John Travoltage. And so it's talking about it's static energy. So like the more I move his foot, the more static energy I build up.
Ouch. Ouch.
and then it and then he can shock himself. But it has teacher resources to go along with it. It lets you there's some questions and things that can go along with it about how far away can his hand be versus, because if you just move his hand once, then his hand has to be closer before it happens. If he builds up a lot more charge, then he can be farther away. And so there's just a lot of concepts there. But they're just quick little things that you can embed into. You can share the link, you can embed into a website, those kinds of things. You can download them even, that are all science, technology, physics, mathematics, kind of related. And that was another one that I got to play with. But if you haven't done that, that's really cool. So, all right. Well, that is all I have.